This is an MJA Inc. Investigations warning. This MJA podcast is rated E for explicit. Some details of a case and language used on this podcast might be upsetting to some of our listeners. Listeners' discretion is advised. And for those who are still with us, kick back and enjoy the show. When there is an ending, there was a beginning. Every victim has a picture to paint. Every true crime has its time and place. Please join our MJ podcast, the series Deep into the Woods, Missing Persons, Unsolved Crimes, and the Does. Welcome to our MJ podcast, this series, Missing Persons, episode 23, part 3, 1980s Missing Persons. The missing persons epidemic that started in 1970 only gained ground in the 1980s. It seemed no one was safe no matter where you lived. Evil spread across the country, taking victim after victim. It seemed the Grim Reaper was standing on every corner. The 1970s and the 1980s was also a wake-up call for our country that we couldn't protect our children. Crimes against children were overwhelming in numbers. The NCIC reports that over 600,000 people go missing each year. There are many who are found quickly, alive and well. but several thousands of them remain missing. We are going to step back in time 40 years ago to profile missing person cases from the 1980s. Some cases won't have a lot of info about the case, but these types of cases needs to be profiled and never forgotten. It's a family's worst nightmare when they have a loved one who has gone missing. Please join us as we step back into time. Good evening. My name is Mark, and I will be your host for tonight's show. Joining me later will be our co-host, Olivia. We are coming to you from Morrisonville, New York, located in the Adirondack Mountains. Case 1. It was on May 1st, 1985, is when 62-year-old Richard Burks Hart, a white male, disappeared and vanished without a trace from North Little Rock, Arkansas. Case 2. It was on May 2nd, 1981, is when 15-year-old Tammy Sue Clements, a white female, went missing and vanished without a trace from Lincoln, Nebraska. Case 3. It was on July 31st, 1987, is when 57-year-old Ray B. Collins, a white male, disappeared and vanished without a trace from Salida, Colorado. Case 4. It was on November 16th, 1986, is when 19-year-old Julia V. Salaka, a white female, went missing and vanished without a trace from Kansas City, Missouri. Case 5. It was on January 4th, 1982, is when 21-year-old Petty Officer William K. Summers, a white male, disappeared without a trace from Bremerton, Washington. In 1982, the 21-year-old Summers was in the United States Navy. Case 6. It was on March 27th, 1989, is when 19-year-old Angela Lynn Chan, a white female, went missing and vanished without a trace from Redmond, Oregon. Case 7. It was on August 5th, 1985, is when 19-year-old David Vernon Lovely, a white male, disappeared and vanished without a trace from Fort Bridger, Wyoming. Case 8. It was on March 6, 1981, is when 37-year-old Gloria Suzanne Corzone, a white female, went missing and vanished without a trace from Warrenton, Pennsylvania. Let's take a pause for the cause, and when we return, Olivia will be on the line. Olivia and I will profile missing person cases from the 1980s. Be back in a moment. Welcome, everyone. Due to conflicting schedules, Olivia will not be on the show tonight. Please catch her on the flip side on our next upcoming episode. Thank you. Welcome to our Mja podcast. This series, Missing Persons, episode 23, part 3, 1980s Missing Persons. Welcome to the state of Arkansas. The Doe Network has 6 males listed as being missing in the 1980s from the state of Arkansas. Case 1. Welcome to North Little Rock, Arkansas. Missing male. It was on May 1st, 1985 is when 62-year-old Richard Burks Hart, a white male, disappeared and vanished without a trace from North Little Rock, Arkansas. This 62-year-old Hart was a World War II veteran. The events during the war triggered the onset of schizophrenia for Hart. Within 10 years of Hart's return from the war, he was committed full-time to the Veterans Hospital and heavily medicated at times. It is believed that shock therapy was even utilized to try and ease Hart's symptoms. Often, Richard Burks Hart, also known as Burks, would wander away and would find a ride to the local bus station in North Little Rock, Arkansas. Hart would board a bus to Memphis, Tennessee, which was his hometown and the home of his wife and 2 daughters. Once the Fort Roots Veterans Hospital staff would notice him missing, they would check the bus station and then call his wife. Burks Hart would always show up in Memphis, Tennessee. In May 1985, the 62-year-old Hart wandered away from the hospital and never was seen or heard from again. Because of the advanced stage of Hart's illness, it is not believed that he survived for very long. The family believes the 62-year-old Hart ran into some trouble and was somehow injured or killed, or was in some sort of accident. If you have any info concerning this case, please call the Fort Roots Veterans Hospital Police Department at 501-257-3053. Welcome to the state of Nebraska. The Doe Network has 4 males listed as being missing in the 1980s from the state of Nebraska. Case 2. Welcome to Lincoln, Nebraska. Missing female. It was on May 2nd, 1981 is when 15-year-old Tammy Sue Clements, a white female, went missing and vanished without a trace from Lincoln, Nebraska. Tammy Clements lived with her mother and stepfather in Niles, Michigan until she reached the age of 14 years old. The 14-year-old Clements then went to live with her father and stepmother, who also lived in Niles, Michigan. It wasn't long after her father moved the family to Lincoln, Nebraska sometime in 1979 to 1980, the exact date is unknown, is when Tammy Clements was 15, her father said they were moving back to Niles, Michigan, and Tammy could go back to live with her mother and stepfather. This upset the 15-year-old Clemens, and she refused to go with them. It was in the summer of 1980 when Clemens had her last conversation with her mother. During the conversation, her 15-year-old daughter, Tammy, told her that she had met some friends in Nebraska and was going to travel to California with them. Shortly thereafter, Tammy Clemens' father moved his family back to Niles, Michigan, and they allowed the 15-year-old Clemens to stay behind in Lincoln, Nebraska. This was the last known contact Tammy Clemens has ever had with anyone. Tammy Clemens has never obtained a driver's license or a state identification card or used her Social Security number. If you have any info concerning this case, please call the Niles Police Department at 269-683-0404. For some reason, the Niles, Michigan Police Department is the primary lead concerning the disappearance of 15-year-old Tammy Clemens from Lincoln, Nebraska. Welcome to the state of Colorado. The Doe Network has 22 males listed as being missing in the 1980s from the state of Colorado. Case 3. Welcome to Salida, Colorado. Missing male. It was on July 31st, 1987, as when 57-year-old Ray B. Collins, a white male, disappeared and vanished without a trace from Salida, Colorado. In July 1987, the 57-year-old Collins and two of his friends, Dave Chaffee and Richard Berth, quit their jobs and set out on a 3-month mining expedition to Salida, Colorado. This was all taking place in the hopes of finding gold and rare gems. 3 weeks into the trip, a family emergency called Berth back to Lake Wales, Colorado. A few days later, Chaffee said he dropped off Collins at the bus station in Colorado Springs, Colorado, for the 57-year-old Collins wanted to see the Grand Canyon. Later that month, Chaffee returned to Florida driving Collins's Toyota pickup truck, which also held Collins's clothes and mining equipment. The 57-year-old Ray B. Collins was never heard from or seen again. During previous investigations, Colorado detectives discovered Chaffee bought 2 $25,000 life insurance policies on both Berth and Collins before their trip. Berth and Collins was aware at the time that Chaffee had purchased the insurance, since Chaffee considered the trip a business adventure. But the other two did not do the same. Chaffee also collected $5,000 from Collins to mine minerals on the Colorado claim. But as detectives learned, the mining camp they set up was on public land visited by other prospectors. Chaffee later collected life insurance funds after Collins was declared dead by the state in 1989. What a surprise Chaffee hasn't been cooperating with investigators. Richard Berth contacted Colorado authorities about 2 years after the trip, very concerned that something tragic may have happened. By the time Berth and Chaffee were then no longer friends. Berth told detectives that Chaffee's behavior turned weird and hostile after they got to Colorado. The 57-year-old Collins called his wife a couple of times in North Carolina to tell her that he was having fun and that they hadn't found very much. The wife found it odd that her husband, the 57-year-old Collins, did not mention wanting to visit the Grand Canyon. When Collins did not come home, his family was very suspicious. The case was reopened in 2008, and Colorado investigators worked a joint investigations with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement and the Winter Haven and Lake Wales police departments. If you have any info concerning the disappearance of 57-year-old Ray B. Collins, please call the Chaffee County Sheriff's Office at 719-530-5729. Welcome to the state of Missouri. The Doe Network has 27 females listed as being missing in the 1980s from the state of Missouri. Case 4. Welcome to Kansas City, Missouri. Missing female. It was on November 16, 1986, is when 19-year-old Julia V. Salaka, a white female, went missing and vanished without a trace from Kansas City, Missouri. In September of 1986, the 19-year-old Salaka had moved from Illinois to Kansas City to live with her brother. It was on November 16, 1986, is when the 19-year-old Salaka told her brother that she was leaving to visit a co-worker. The 19-year-old Julia V. Salaka never returned home, and all of her personal belongings were left behind at her residence. On March 30th, 1987, North Kansas City Police stopped a man driving Julia Salaka's 1974 light blue Mercury Comet. When police determined the car didn't belong to the driver, the car was impounded. The man was questioned several times and denied any involvement in the disappearance of 19-year-old Julia Salaka, but he was caught in several lies during questioning. Investigators got information that in January of 1987, the Illinois State Police stopped another vehicle in Crestwood, Illinois that had the same license plates that were issued to Salaka's car. Foul play is suspected in the disappearance of 19-year-old Julia Salaka from Kansas City, Missouri. If you have any info concerning this case, please call the Kansas City Police Department at 816-234-5136. Let's take a pause for the cause, and when we return, I will profile more missing person cases from the 1980s. Be back in a moment. Welcome back to our MJA podcast, this series, Missing Persons, episode 23, part 3, 1980s Missing Persons. Welcome to the state of Washington. The Doe Network has 31 males listed as being missing in the 1980s from the state of Washington. Case 5. Welcome to Burlington, Washington. Missing male. It was on January 4th, 1982, is when 21-year-old Petty Officer William K. Summers, a white male, disappeared without a trace from Burlington, Washington. In 1982, the 21-year-old Summers was in the United States Navy. On January 4th, 1982, Petty Officer Summers was assigned to the USS Robinson, which was in port at the Naval Shipyard in Burlington, Washington. The 21-year-old Summers disappeared while in port that day and has not been seen again. Petty Officer Summers was raised a Baptist and became very religious around the time of his disappearance. It was reported that the 21-year-old Summers became argumentative regarding his religious convictions and has been known to become physical in these arguments. It is suspected that Petty Officer Summers has become involved in a religious cult and may have a mental or emotional disorder. It was known that the 21-year-old Summers liked working with children and mentally handicapped people. Around the time of his disappearance, Summers mentioned an interest in moving to Canada. If you have any info concerning this case, please call the Navy Criminal Investigation Service Headquarters at 360-476-3650. Welcome to the state of Oregon. The Doe Network has 14 females listed as being missing in the 1980s from the state of Oregon. Case 6. Welcome to Redmond, Oregon. Missing female. It was on March 27, 1989, is when 19-year-old Angela Lynn Chan, a white female, went missing and vanished without a trace from Redmond, Oregon. At the time of her disappearance, her husband, Bruce Chan, was a lieutenant in the U.S. Marines stationed at Camp Pendleton in California. The couple was estranged but continued on a friendly relationship. The 19-year-old Angela Chan was engaged to another man. Chan was living with her parents in Redmond, Oregon, and Bruce Chan was on leave for the Easter weekend. On that morning, 19-year-old Chan's disappearance, Angela and Bruce Chan went trap shooting in an area off of State Highway 126. At around 2 p.m., according to Bruce Chan, after shooting, he dropped Angela Chan off in front of her parents' house and he left to return to Camp Pendleton. After Bruce Chan's departure, the 19-year-old Chan's parents believed she had gone to her sister's in Oregon to stay with a friend. 2 days later, they discovered their daughter Angela Chan had never showed up at her friend's house. That's when the 19-year-old Angela Chan's parents reported their daughter missing. Angela Chan's vehicle, a yellow Datsun, was located on U.S. Highway 126, parked on the north shoulder just west of Klein Falls Bridge. The white tennis shoes the 19-year-old Chan was wearing at the time of her disappearance were found in her abandoned car, as well as her coat. There was fuel in the car, and it was in good running condition. However, the passenger side window had been broken out, and a large rock was laying between the front seats. Several witnesses claim they saw Angela Chan's car and a female matching her description around the Klein Falls Bridge after Bruce Chan says he headed back to California. The 19-year-old Angela Chan has not been seen or heard from since. If you have any info concerning the disappearance of Angela Chan from Redmond, Oregon, please call the the Deschutes County Sheriff's Office, Lieutenant Chad Davis at 541-388-6655. Welcome to the state of Wyoming. The Doe Network has 6 males listed as being missing in the 1980s from the state of Wyoming. Case 7. Welcome to Fort Bridger, Wyoming. Missing male. It was on August 5th, 1985 is when 19-year-old David Vernon Lovely, a white male, disappeared and vanished without a trace from Fort Bridger, Wyoming. Although the last time his family heard from him was August 5th, 1985, the case didn't come to the Sweetwater County Sheriff's Office until 9 days later. This is when some campers found the 19-year-old Lovely's abandoned burgundy 1978 Yamaha motorcycle near Baxter Road. The story of Lovely's disappearance is baffling. The 19-year-old Lovely had become separated from his family during a cross-country move. According to police reports, David Lovely's mother, was driving a large U-Haul, and the 19-year-old Lovely was driving his motorcycle. They stopped every 30 miles to check on David Lovely. When they got to Evanston, David Lovely's mother and sister wanted to stop, and the 19-year-old Lovely wanted to keep going. David Lovely left the two, telling them he would wait for them at the rest stop further east. The 19-year-old Lovely's mother or sister never saw him again. The last time David Lovely was heard from is when he called his aunt. The 19-year-old Lovely told his aunt he had trouble with his motorcycle and pushed it to the Bingo truck stop in Fort Bridger, Wyoming. A rough-looking man on a motorcycle worked on the bike and fixed it better than it was. Lovely told his aunt during a conversation with her on the phone. The 19-year-old Lovely also told his aunt he was afraid of the man who fixed his motorcycle. The family and police rode to the area where the motorcycle was found with the ATVs and searched all around. The keys were left in the bike, and it had a half a tank of gas, and it was in running condition. If you have any info concerning the disappearance of 19-year-old David Lovely from Fort Bridger, Wyoming, please call the Sweetwater County Sheriff's Office. Detective Dick Blass at 307-875-1400, extension 5294. Welcome to the state of Pennsylvania. The Doe Network has 34 females listed as being missing in the 1980s from the state of Pennsylvania. Case 8. Welcome to Warrenton, Pennsylvania. Missing female. It was on March 6, 1981 is when 37-year-old Gloria Suzanne Corzon, a white female, went missing and vanished without a trace from Warrenton, Pennsylvania. It was on that day that this 37-year-old Gloria Corzon was last seen as she left her job, which is about 6 miles from her home. It was in early February of 1981 is when Corzon's brother had last spoken to his sister when he called her from his home in Massachusetts to say their mother had undergone heart bypass surgery and was in the hospital. In the following weeks, her family made dozens of calls to the 37-year-old Corzon's home, being told by Gloria's husband, William Corzon, that she either wasn't there or wouldn't come to the phone. Corzon's family members left numerous messages, but never heard back from the 37-year-old Corzon. In May of 1981, Gloria Corzon's mother received a Mother's Day card supposedly from Gloria. It wasn't signed, not with the familiar Love Gloria, but the more formal Gloria Corzon, and it wasn't in her handwriting. That is when the 37-year-old Corzon's family contacted the police to report her as missing. When the chief of police went to Corzon's residence, William Corzon said that his wife had gone to visit an aunt in Florida. Gloria Corzon had an aunt in Florida, but she had not heard from Gloria in months. William Corzon would give various and conflicting stories as to where his wife's Gloria's whereabouts. William Corzon also claimed to have seen his wife on numerous occasions, but they all turned out to be false. About a month before the 37-year-old Gloria Corzon disappeared, she sent a letter to her stepfather instructing him not to open it unless something happened to her. The letter was a 3-page list of beatings that Gloria Corzon claimed to have suffered at the hands of her husband, William. The Corzons were not unknown to local police, who had responded to at least 8 domestic incidents at their home between 1976 and 1980. The 37-year-old Gloria Corzon filed for protection from abuse order against her husband, William, in 1978 and in 1980. But the 37-year-old Corzon would always withdraw her complaints before the court hearings. Police obtained a search warrant in 1986 to dig up William Corzon's backyard. The first search turned up nothing, but the second search a week later yielded the body of Gloria's pet dog. William Corzon was and still is the prime suspect in the disappearance and probable death of his wife. William Corzon divorced his wife Gloria Corzon in 1987. During the divorce proceedings, William Corzon invoked his Fifth Amendment right involving questions concerning the whereabouts of his wife, Gloria Corzon. It was 16 years after Corzon's disappearance in 1997, Gloria Corzon was declared dead. Gloria Corzon's brother, Ralph Kidder, is the only one left in the family who is still alive, and he still seeks answers to locate his sister, Gloria Corzon. If you have any info concerning the disappearance of 37-year-old Gloria Corzon from Warrenton, Pennsylvania, please call the Warrenton Town Police Department at 215-343-3311. I would like to give a special thanks to our viewers and listeners for tuning in, for you all have been so kind. I have a quote for you all. The same boiling water that softens the potato hardens the egg. It's what you're made of, not the circumstances. Writer unknown. Always remember, folks, that if you ever get bored with nothing to do, well, take a walk deep into the woods. You might be surprised at what you might find. That's the end of our MJA podcast, this series, Missing Persons. This has been episode 23, part 3, 1980s Missing Persons. And we say to all of you, good night from Morrisonville, New York, located in the Adirondack Mountains.